Where can I download the syllabus? All right, so let me show you here. So if you come over here and you go into the info pack, it'll give you pretty much everything that you need in here. This is wiresharktraining.com. It's part of Wireshark University. And essentially in here, it's going to give you all the details of exactly what to do. This is probably one of the best laid out exam prep guides for one of these one-off exams that I've seen in a while. It gives you pretty much everything that it is that you need. What I will do is I will download the syllabus and I will share it with the class here on our next break. But basically what you could do is everything that you need to know is in here essentially, and here is the actual objectives. So just a quick couple of minutes to go over the objective list. So I think this is very helpful for anybody looking to take this exam, because it is one of those things where the exam maps so closely to what's on here and covers everything so fairly. It's pretty relevant to just kind of go over what you see here. So the network analysis overview, I'm not going to list every one of these, read it every one of these bullets, because I know that you could see this and review this yourself. But basically this is what I've been trying to talk about in the foundations and what we're going to touch on in the next topic, protocol refresher. They're basically saying here that you have to understand what the role of network analyst is. What are you using Wireshark for? What can it be used for? That basic network plus, that basic OSI model, what's an IP address, taking that to the next level of being able to open this tool, and here's the key, folks, to accurately place it in the right place to capture data that's relevant to what it is that you're trying to do. So I said this a lot in the foundations course, where I said you have to play detective, be a private investigator. It really is true. Being able to go through and go and understand what it is that you're looking at is pretty much a lifelong type of journey, as everything changes on us rapidly, and new technologies and new protocols come up and they phase the old stuff out, like token ring and all that other, the old IPX, Apple Talk. When they start phasing that stuff out and you start moving to different protocols and different technologies, this is a constant learning evolution. You'll always be looking at the next thing, but again, to take it back here into the section 1 of the exam, understanding how to basically capture any data is relevant, and then studying and understanding what that data is really telling you in the capture is the second part of it. So, and we'll get into this as we move along, and again covered it in the foundations, is that for example, okay, so you've captured data and it shows you an IP address, but when you then come over to the tool itself and you say, well, what does that really mean? Okay, well, that's the IP header, and exactly what do all these things mean and why. And when you pull up the actual diagram and you see specifically how many sections of the frame or the packet there are, that's each one of these broken down with actual data in it. So this one has the don't fragment set. And why is that? What is fragmentation? And again, we'll get into that as we go along the course, but that's essentially what they're saying here in network analysis overview. What are you really using this tool for? The second section, an introduction to Wireshark, which we'll go over, was what I was talking about in module 1. What exactly is Wireshark? What are the menu options in it? How do I use them? What's the packets list pane? What is setting preferences and doing all that kind of stuff? Where do I get it? How do I download it? How do I install it? What version should I be running? Can I install multiple versions of Wireshark on my system? All of these elements are captured here. And these are some of the things I was saying earlier that you may want to, or you may, I should say, you may use this tool very often and have never ever adjusted some of the things in it. Some of the tips that we learned in the other course was, for example, when you're using Wireshark, you have on the bottom of the window here. Let me just make an adjustment real quick so that you can see it. On the bottom of the window, you have specific sections down here that you can adjust. You can make comments down here. You can pull up the expert directly if you configure it correctly. This is a configuration we set. What does Profile Classic mean? What data is found in here and why? These are all things that you must know for this exam. You have to know these specifics, and that's what the next section is talking about here. Okay, so section 3, capturing traffic. So we're going to touch on this in this course. We covered it heavily in the foundations course, but when you capture traffic, that's not necessarily just starting the capture and stopping the capture. There's so many elements within that. And what exactly are you looking at when you do capture the data? There's filtering that you could do. There's a lot of stuff that revolves around the capturing of traffic, and I had mentioned it many times, and it'll be a running theme. And I hope that I don't aggravate you, because I don't want it to sound like I'm nagging. But I can't stress enough the placement and the actual, how to capture data off the network and how important that is, not just for this exam, but really for your day-to-day operation of the tool. For example, if you run a tap on a full duplex network, if you capture data on a switch network and you need to span a port or use a Cisco span, if you have Wireshark running locally versus remotely, how do I do that? So all those types of things, all those types of things are part of section 3 and very relevant to the exam. Creating and applying capture filters, which we will get to in the course. We covered it very deeply in the foundations, the specifics of the capture versus display. But if you were going to run a capture, basically there's a lot of things here that are different between the actual capture filter and the display filter. The capture filter uses Berkeley, and the display filter is very different from it. It does not. So there's similarities in the filter that you can write, the expression you can write, and there's major differences. So with capture filters specifically, you have to learn how to write capture filters, how to apply them, their limitations. You have to learn the same thing with display filters, and you have to, for the exam, and this is when I had mentioned the tricky part of it, you have to know specifically which ones are similar. So for example, can I write ICMP here and ICMP here? Is that actually relevant? Does it work on both? So practicing with the tool and going between the two types of filters is extremely important to passing this exam. Defining global and personal preferences. This is what I had mentioned before when I had kind of drifted over into the preferences section and just turned checksums on and off. Do you know what protocols you can do that for? Is it IP only, or can you do that for IP, TCP, and UDP? So these are the types of things you will have to know. And just so you know the answer to that, yes, it's IP, UDP, and TCP you can do the checksums with. But again, it's very, very important to know how to adjust the personal preferences, and how does that map to profiles. So for example, if you load up Wireshark and you change all the preferences and save them, you could save them in either the default profile, or you can change that cross profile. So we had looked at this before. Again, let me drop this down here so you can see it. But down here it'll tell you that the profile is classic. Well, interestingly, I made one that says use DNS resolution, and it'll try to resolve the names. So I could switch between these these profiles. But what does that really mean? That's really all that means is that there's a set of preferences that are adjusted for each one of those. So as an example, I can make changes here and save them to this profile, these preferences to this profile, and then select between them as necessary when running the capture. So these are the types of things that map to specifically what we were talking about here in defining global and personal preferences. So another thing, it's not covered heavily here, and quite honestly, it's something you will need to know for the exam. But you know, out of the 100 or so questions, you know, 80 of them are not on colorizing traffic. But you definitely need to know how to manage the coloring of the traffic that you're working with and that you capture. And the reason for that is because the coloring rules help you to see things and to really navigate the tool more easily. Because as you will see from using this tool, you can get an eye strain very quickly trying to figure out all the different things that are going on in it. And you know, you could very easily capture 10,000 packets and not really know what you're looking for. So for example, if you really just wanted to strip out a specific conversation and colorize it, you can do that very easily with some predefined colors, or you can go in and make another coloring rule. So again, and this window here, the coloring rules window, is definitely something that you're going to need to study for the exam. Key here list is processed in order until match is found. Very, very relevant for your studies. But more so with mapping to the objectives, very, very important to understand that there is a need and there is a reason for colorizing some of these packets. So be aware that this is an area that you'll have to study for on the exam. Okay, section 7, another very relevant part of the exam is understanding time values and being able to work with them. We're going to go through that in depth in one of our modules, so I'm not going to really do a deep dive on it here.